We'll give it another minute, Luis, then you can kick it off.
Okay, well, while we wait for a couple of more people joining, I wanna thank Adam for spending a couple of minutes to talk about my EO. We do this at uh, every one of these webinars. So I'm gonna share my screen. Yeah, can I share my screen? Yeah, I don't think I can share my screen.
Should be able to.
Yeah, it says the host isn't allowing sharing for this meeting.
JB, can you just hit accept?
Oh, sorry. Yep. I don't see an accept option. I just keep seeing more and more recording options.
Yeah, no, I think you need to make me host so I can share my screen.
JB, can you just make him host? Just click on his name and say make host.
I will do that. Luis, you just moved.
Did I?
Um, mhm. Don't see that as an option. Is that a right click maybe? You forgive me for not knowing how to do this stuff, but I'm not a Zoom guy.
Don't worry. So you know what? If you guys, I'll just talk about it. So
Yeah,
I
you do
just
it.
put on the chat a URL to the Connect site, which is where EO has all the my EO events, all the my EO groups, etc. So as you may know, this is the what we call the community site. That's where lots of the discussion around groups happen. You can see on the left-hand side of it, you will see a list of groups. So the first one is called Connect EO. You will see it has 20,296 group members, which actually, if you're ever curious about how many people, how many members does EO have, that's a pretty updated number. So we're currently over 20,000 members since last month, I believe. Now, don't pay a lot of attention to that number in the coming 2 months because it's renewal time, right? So I hope you're all renewing, of course. So that means that between now until the end of June, people will be renewing, then people will be coming in and out of the system in the month of July. So probably until end of July, we won't have the new figure taking into account non-renewals and then new renewals. So that's just a curiosity. And if you scroll down on that menu on the left, you will see a lot of different groups. And I wanted to bring your attention to one that says My EO Industries. If you click there, you will see that a number of different discussions about industries appear. And one of them asks if you want to join one of the 16 industry groups. So I'm going to copy that also in the chat because you're probably one of the 16 industries that we have here. So I put that link on the chat. So if you click on that second link I just published, you will be able to see all the different 16 groups that we have, which go from construction, consumer goods, e-commerce, education, entertainment, financial services, food and beverage, healthcare, manufacturing, media and marketing, professional services, real estate, staffing and recruiting, technology, transportation, and travel and hospitality. So those cover most of the EO population. So I would want to inspire you, if you're a part of any of these industries, just click on that link, join that group. You will have access to specific meetings that they do once a month. Some of these groups even have a virtual forum uh, groups that meet on a quarterly basis virtually. And there's a wealth of knowledge of expertise to be learned out of there. So just out of curiosity, is anybody a member of any of these groups and has experienced anything of what I'm just saying? No? Okay, so now it's your chance to go click one of those 16 links. Oh, Dave, great. Thank you,
Yeah, I
Dave.
belong to, there's a SaaS group. I don't think it's through this particular thing, but I belong to an EO industry SaaS group. I think it's because they don't have SaaS in this one of the 16. But yeah, I belong to an industry group and it is awesome. Really, really good. In fact, I belong to an industry forum as well.
Exactly. But I think that's the point. It's a different experience that EO provides, right? So probably that SaaS group is like a subgroup within technology. That happens sometimes. So we have like the big umbrella ones, which are the 16. And then the cool thing is that, you find people like-minded that know the same industry. So the interesting thing here is that in spite of these firms sometimes appearing to be competitive, what ends up happening is that many of the members are in different states or even different countries. So they don't mind sharing what they're doing, their best practices, knowledge about the industry, because it's very difficult that someone from Germany is going to compete with someone from Brazil, but or one of us, right? So again, click on that link that I put in the chat, join one of the industry groups, and I hope you have a good experience doing that. And with that, I'm gonna send it back to Adam. Thank you, Adam.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll get right to the show. JB, take it away.
Woo! All right. The show will not include any cool backlays presentations. I couldn't figure out how to get PowerPoint over here. It was an outdated presentation anyway. So you're just gonna have to put up with me. And every now and then I'm going to do this and show you a cool graphic and try to come up close. All right. That's the essence of my plan right there. That's me airborne. If anybody knows the Jackson Hole Air Force from a while back, that's what my entire life was about. So we're going to talk about serendipity, and I'm encouraging engagement because I can't think of anything more boring than listening to me talk about me. And so I'm going to try to fill it with barbs and hooks and stuff that'll encourage you to want to engage. But fundamentally, it took me 40 years to figure out that I absolutely suck at planning. And my whole life up until then was about trying to create a plan, execute the plan, and realize that the plan failed, but something cool happened. And as I watched these things happen, I started to realize that at first I was really arrogant. I thought, man, I'm just a lucky guy. And the second time I got fired, my boss actually said to me, man, you sure you're not Irish? You sure you don't have a lucky horseshoe shoved up your ass? Because I already had another job lined up while I was in the process of being fired. And it took 5 times of being fired to realize that I just wasn't destined to work for other people. And that if I worked for me, even if it was a half-baked plan, I would cut myself some slack and we could move on. So lucky enough, or was it serendipity? Who knows? I grew up overseas. 16 of my first 18 years were banging around Europe. My father was a professional drug dealer. He's in the pharmaceutical industry. So I assimilated languages because that's what you do when you're little. So I'm fluent, native fluent in French and reasonably fluent in German. German was more of a learned thing. The French was a true assimilation. And so I'll never try to learn anything else again. I'll assimilate everything. The languages were just part of life. I didn't think of them as an advantage. My entire life was built on skiing all the way through high school. I competed internationally throughout Europe. And my senior year in high school, I had a really, really bad wreck on the Hahnenkamm downhill. If anybody knows anything about internationally racing, the Hahnenkamm is the big daddy, the mother of all mothers. I dislocated both shoulders, compressed my spine, broke my nose with a ski, disqualified, and pretty much terminated the dreams of being a top world-class FIS racer. So had to go to plan B, which was college stuff. And I had applied to Dartmouth and Bates and Bowdoin because they all had ski teams, and Tufts because my parents went there. And my guidance counselor said, this is trifolds, nothing electronic, from Brussels, sight unseen. He said, Hobart College, upstate New York. They're looking for people like you. I don't know what the hell you're doing, but you have some languages. So got rejected from all of the real schools. And Tufts said, hey, it's nice to see that both your parents went here, but we don't think you're mature enough for college. Your aptitude is high. Your performance is low. Why don't you take a year off and go find yourself and mature? My parents put their foot down and said, you do that and you're never coming back. So go to Hobart and just tough it out. I went to Hobart and I got a degree in environmental engineering, which was a result of not being able to make up my mind about a major, because I found that if you declared your major at the end of sophomore year as an independent major, it bought you another year to figure out what you were doing. So I became an independent major without a plan. And the plan evolved by the time of graduation to be this environmental engineering thing that nobody had ever heard of, and was very uncool. And there weren't a lot of jobs for it. So I graduated, barely, fucked off, and went to France. I became a ski bum in Chamonix. Anybody familiar with Chamonix? Considered the most extreme death sport capital of the world, which is really, really melodramatic, but it's also some of the most incredibly beautiful, massive, grounding, balance the fine line between life and death. And that's where I learned that extreme sports people don't have death wishes. They have extreme life engagement. And that perspective becomes more apparent right at the edge. So I was a glacier guide. I was a chef at night because I got fired as a waiter. And as I was escorted out the front door, the chef was around the corner whistling, "Hey, Jimmy, come here. I need help." So I learned to cook because I got fired. That's, serendipity at its best. So I could cook at night, ski in the day. I hooked up with some really big name, big mountain, early explorer guys at the time, and got to guide people down something called the Vallée Blanche, which is a 15-mile glacier run. It's an all-day adventure, and it's extraordinary. And I did it for cash under the table. My first real entrepreneurial experience, because lemonade stands were boring. Got to the end of the season. My plan was to be a sailboard instructor in the Mediterranean in the summer, a glacier guide in the winter, and just do that until I fell in a crevasse. And it didn't work out that way because I had another crazy bad wreck and had to make my way back to the States because I didn't have insurance. So got a lecture from Dad, insurance, responsibility, grow up, get your shit together. And so I did. I moved to Boston, tried to get a job, couldn't get a job, and finally managed to find the world's biggest electronic component manufacturer. And they hired me as an international marketing guy, which I loved, until they said, "You got to go sell," which I hated. And so after a couple of years of selling here in the Boston area, anybody remember DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation? Yeah, well, when they shit the bed, so did I. And I got fired. And that was my real big first time firing. And I was devastated. Oh my God, my career's over. What am I going to do? Life sucks. And I was immediately picked up by their biggest competitor for what I knew about AMP. And that competitor is who my Irish boss accused me when he fired me a year later. He's the one who accused me of having a lucky horseshoe up my ass because I'd already been recruited by another company. Somewhere along the way in there, between being firing and trying to discover why I wasn't any good at planning, I met my wife on a blind date. Her ex-boyfriend had fallen in love with my ex-girlfriend, and they had connected and decided that we needed to meet each other without either one of us knowing it. So that shit all took care of itself. Let's call that serendipity. And I finally had an opportunity to start a business. I took some friends who were all money managers and big deals who thought they were good skiers. I took them to Chamonix for 2 weeks to show them what real skiing was, because up until then they thought Killington was the tits. And we spent 2 weeks where it snowed every day. It was the most insane stuff ever. It was incredible. We started calling ourselves Team Extreme. And by the end of those 2 weeks, we had decided we needed to be a business because we knew more about this shit than anybody else in the world did at the time. So we did, started a company, Team Extreme, had product manufactured in Hong Kong, connected with great designers. We're planning an IPO. Got 18 months into the cycle and found out that you have to think about weather in the ski industry. And it was the first national snow drought in North America, and it shut us down. So we had to take all this inventory back, and we were already halfway into our second year development. That stuff got seized.
JB, one second. Hey, Justin, can you mute your phone, or JB, maybe you can mute him?
Well, maybe I can.
Oh, sorry, guys.
It's all right.
Guess this thing went on when I put it down. I'm listening, though.
Yeah, I do not have moderator control. I can't do anything to anybody's stuff. Somebody else is controlling this. So
Sorry about that, guys. A toddler got it.
no worries. Toddlers are awesome. Circle of life stuff. got married because it's a cool thing to do. As a result of the failure of Team Extreme, the second round of equipment got seized by customs because we were being illegally produced in China or something silly like that. So I'm looking for the silver lining in that, and I realized that I had developed some skills at finding sales reps and convincing them that they were inspirational and they could go do the hard work that I hated to do. So that translated over to a newlywed, and we just randomly had to move to New Jersey to start that business, which happens to be where my wife was from. So when the rest of the important part of life that I was still oblivious to started happening, we had kids. We were near my in-laws and cousins. And so my kids had an extraordinarily good youth, much different from mine, growing up all over the place. I moved 30 times by the time I was 30. And I thought that was normal for everybody. So here we are in New Jersey, stuck in a time warp, raising the kids. And I'm trying to recover from, not being a successful entrepreneur or a professional. My wife said, well, why don't you be a stay-at-home dad? You're really good at this dad stuff. And maybe that's how it's supposed to be. I'm the breadwinner. I'm an executive, and she was, and she executed flawlessly at that level. So I became a stay-at-home dad for all of 6 months until it was driving me nuts. And ex-business boss called up, said, weird company in New Jersey's doing something funny with energy-saving devices. You know some shit about that. Why don't you go talk to them? I did. They needed a director of something. They didn't know what, because the business was floundering. And they hired me, and that got me into the energy management business. When they fired me, which they did 2 months after my son Ross was born, I realized that I did have an opportunity. So I started selling energy service plans. The utilities were subsidizing energy recovery programs, and it took all of 2 years to scale to $1.5 million, leveraging ESCOs, and get recruited into EO by Mike Michalowicz. If anybody knows the Profit First author, he was my first forum mate in EO, and it took 6 months. And my first forum retreat to break my arm and end up in a hospital for 10 days on an IV drip, to find out that my business was a train wreck about to happen. I had seen 2 influential speakers in the first 6 months. Simon Sinek, learned about the golden circle and finding your why. And I realized that what I was doing was not my why. And the second guy was Jacques Worth with the E-Myth. And I was realizing that trying to do the stuff that I thought was appealing was really sucky stuff. So I was doing it all wrong. And while I was trying to recover from this intense wreck again, I self-prescribed therapy and decided to build a deck out the front of the house, just as, rehab, because I've got a lot of titanium in my arm. So I figured moving stuff around, building a deck would be great therapy. Town said, no, you can't build a deck in front of the house. And I said, but I can't build one behind it. And I need, it has to be a deck because of the pitch. And he said, well, if you can make your deck look like a stone patio, I'll approve it. So Google stone deck. Some guy out in Minneapolis had a product that makes a deck look like stone. Genius. I bought it, got the approval, started building the deck. And every single day, contractors are stopping by going, what is this sorcery? This is great stuff. How do I get it? Called John, said, you need help. You've got no impact here. And there's a lot of people around here who want this shit. So he gave me a distribution territory that I didn't know it was an option, but he gave me an option. So I became a stone deck distribution guy. And he started feeding me leads to architects in New York City. I would call them up and they would say, this is great stuff. We've been waiting for you. Can we put this on a screw jack? You know what a screw jack was? Again, Google. Some company out of Bison had a cool product out of Denver called Bison, had a cool product called screw jack. And I called them up, said, hey, I'm the stone deck guy for the, New York Northeast area. They said, great, we've been waiting for you. Here, we'll give you leads to become the Bison guy. And that became Roof Deck Solutions. And that would have been 2004. So I'd been in EO for 4 years. I was in full recovery mode. I now had a business that I could build based on the cool shit that I had learned from other EO members. acknowledging that the one that I thought I had built had totally destroyed. So the plan failed. The recovery was awesome. And by then I was really becoming aware of this tendency that I was, in my experience, I was wasting time creating the plans because the real effort and reward was coming from reacting to the catastrophe that was the plan dissolving. So I started paying attention to that. I started presenting on it. It came to fruition with a family tragedy. I won't bore you with all those details some other time, or if you want to reach out to me. Basically, the essence of EO, the EO language, which we used to call Gestalt and we now call forum language. And it doesn't matter whatever it is. It's the bit about not giving advice, but about asking smart questions and then helping other people make their own decisions. That became a pivotal focus of my parenting. And in particular, the recovery for my 4 nephews and niece who had been orphaned, created a forum for them. And that, in the final analysis, we've been able to determine that that's probably what gave them the substance to avoid who knows what kind of drug dependence or suicides or whatever. But it grounded them all. And here we are 15 years later. They're married. They've got kids. They've grown up. They've moved through it all. And it's all because of the EO process and the EO protocols and the way we do this active listening stuff. So went through the whole cycle in New Jersey, learned how to do each board roll the hard way, but each one produced a silver lining. And then next thing you know, COVID hits. Well, COVID, prior to that, 80% of my business was in Manhattan. And COVID shut New York City down completely, 100%. So 80% of my business disappeared, and the rest was absolutely on hold. Thought maybe it was time to just call it quits. Maybe it's an early retirement time, but I didn't want to leave EO. And so a bunch of EO types, we all scrambled together and became like a lifeline network for sourcing PPP and PP, everything else that all the hospitals and in particularly smaller hospital schools needed. So we created a network of distribution resources that offset the challenges that the bureaucratic world had. And it was certainly life-changing for me and helpful for a bunch of other people. So that kind of had me feeling good through the shit. And next thing you know, as the pandemic starts to resolve a little bit, I get a call from one of my core clients who had been in New York City. They had quietly consolidated, moved to Connecticut, and decided to build huge condo complexes that had stuff that needed my stuff. Modular roof deck materials. It's like Legos for builders. And it wasn't an industry before 2004, and it became one while I was building that stupid deck. So serendipitously, I got calls to start providing shitloads of material into Connecticut and up through New England. Watched the real estate stuff happening, said to my wife, wow, this is like winning the lottery, but we didn't have to really take a risky ticket. Let's do a clever COVID cash out, get the fuck out of New Jersey. Sorry, I hope I'm not offending anybody from New Jersey, but I would wear my Red Sox hat to Yankees games and say I was at a Sox game and piss people off. It was time to escape and get back to New England. So full circle, back to Cape Cod, which is where my first childhood memories were, and stepped into the Boston chapter. Was immediately voluntold to get on the board, and I'm in a forum called Growth. So taking a lifestyle business and cascading it down slowly was the plan. Guess what's happening? I'm freaking scaling because that's what my peers are. And I'm getting tools out of Forum that are helping me do that. So I'm a new grandfather. So truly circle of life stuff. And 100%, ever since that huge pivotal point, let's call it in right around 2010, where I realized that I was never going to try to plan anything again. Everything was going to be intentional, proactive searching during the present for whatever the opportunity was going to provide. And I'm often able to come out as one of the early contenders for seizing the next wave, just because I'm not paying attention to trying to salvage a plan. I'm literally just looking for the opportunities. I learned a mantra in EO. I use it every day. I share it often. I'm going to share it now. And if you hear me tell you again sometime, you can say, "Oh, shut up. I already heard you say that." It's a mantra that grounds me in the present and permits me to open up to opportunity. It's a simple one. No amount of regret can change the past. No amount of anxiety can change the future. Any amount of gratitude can change the present. And it turns out that there's science that indicates that being grateful, the act of gratitude, drops cortisol, and you can only be grateful in the present. You can't do it in the past. You can talk about when I was grateful, but the feeling of gratitude only exists in the present. So it's an automatic presence activator. And once I'm there and I'm breathing, I'm like, okay, what's the cool shit that's happening now in the midst of this chaos? So that's become the essence of my life. And that's how serendipity works. And I'm passionate about it. And I'll arm wrestle anybody who thinks that planning is, I'm kidding. I don't actually do that. Everybody's experience is different, but Dave Will has a hand up.
I don't want to arm wrestle, but I am curious if you doing strategic planning.
So here's my strategic plan ever since the inception at EO. I need to generate $100,000 a month so that I can requalify. And that was true up until the point that I became, an excused veteran. What do we call us? Tenured. And so I didn't have to execute that plan anymore, but that's what the reactive part of the business was built around. So I'm just automatically banging out about 1.2, 1.5 million a year. Although this year we're scaling accidentally or intentionally because the opportunities are there to be seized. So I do not have a strategic plan that is written out. I have a moral code plan, and I operate. One of the reasons that EO has been so profoundly impactful for me is because I align with the core values of EO and the membership, because I don't make any decisions without making sure that I'm aligned at the value level. And then decisions become effortless. Anytime I'm struggling with a decision, I realize that there's something that's not in alignment at the value level. And that's everything. Do I buy more inventory? I don't typically do that. I've eliminated all of the stuff that is stress inducing in a business, and I operate entirely electronically, third-party shipping. I'm just drop shipping material that I never even handle. And I go in as an expert to value engineer projects. And I can do that with my eyes closed or FaceTime. And it doesn't really require a massive plan. My plan isn't to become 10x and cash out. I learned, 10 years ago, to take cash out of the LLC that I run and put it somewhere else. And so I've been quietly leveraging, dividend income producing investments forever. And that will end up being my cash out at the time I shut down. I just mentally made that my decision. And that number will be the equivalent of whatever I could have sold my business for without having to do the work to sell the business. Does that answer your question, or is that?
Yeah, man, you're living in the moment. I'm curious though what Bill and Sergey think about that.
I'd like to know too.
So, and any thoughts to recovering revenue business? Because that's one of the things that happens in many industries, right?
I'm sorry, say it again, Luis.
Any thoughts on recurrent revenue? How to generate recurrent revenue business versus just one-shot projects, sales, etc.
Well, so the experience was, and this was as we moved from New York, physically moved up here and started working with the big core clients in Connecticut. I stopped responding to any lead generation attempts, and I put 100% of my effort into those core clients, about 4 of them, who were all doing similar things. And by putting 100% of, okay, it's not eggs in one basket, it's eggs in 4 baskets. I drove the relationships all the way to the ownership level. And so in a world where traditionally it's bid, spec, and they use what they call leveling sheets to make sure they're paying the same or best price possible, I go in and destroy those leveling sheets and flip to beyond price and into total cost as a value statement that includes labor. So the stuff that I convince them to use shortens their installation time, saves them money from a labor standpoint. Their sheets and their process don't permit that, and the bidding process doesn't permit that. So I get last look. They do all the bid shit. I get called in a month before, and they say, I'll get a text from Gus Papajohn, who owns A Papajohn Construction in Connecticut. It's not the pizza place. It's a really big development place. And he'll say, hey, we're ready for you. Come in and do the value engineering thing that you do. And then let's get this shit on site by a month. So I bypassed all of that stuff by realizing that relationship management was important. And now I just have those 4 core relationships and the occasional spinoff. It used to be 2, but one of them split into 2 entities, not directly competing, but the 2 partners couldn't agree, so they split off. For me, that felt like a stock split. I've invested in these 2 in this one company, it just split and became 2. So I just doubled my opportunity base through the same core relationship and just had more people to work with. So that's as close as I can come to answering your question, Luis. Relationships for me are the annuitized part of the business, and I'm no longer chasing one and done, because so much of construction is one and done. I numbed you all into silence. So here's a fun fact. In New Jersey, we had a team that would go work with Rutgers MBA program, because one of the New Jersey board members was also on the board of Rutgers graduate school. So we went down as a team of 4 to present to their MBA candidates. And one member was an ex-military guy, very much about precision, execution, planning. Another member she was awesome. She ran an advertising agency she covered BMW and Porsche in the USA, very much a plan, execute. And I'm watching all of these kids out in the audience scribbling down their notes about plan, execute, refine your plan, make your target, set huge. At the time, we were, what were they called? Hairy, audacious gold BHAGs. And it was all about that. And I got up last and I threw up a picture of the badass mountain in Chamonix. And I said, this was my plan. And then here's what happened to it. And I showed an avalanche. And I said, I'm not good at planning. I'm going to be the counter perspective. And my only mission here is to let you know that there's not just one way to do stuff. There's always multiple ways. The thing about being an entrepreneur is being able to react at some point to when your plan didn't work and make an opportunity out of it, as opposed to just giving up. Failure is not a mode. Everything's a lesson, blah, 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 all those platitudes. But I spit it out for 15 minutes and told them, if you got questions or you're frustrated with planning, come talk to me and I'll tell you why it's sometimes fun not to plan. There's no doubt there's stress, but the better you get, as we all know with everything, the more times I failed, the more times I recovered. And I finally stopped looking at the failures and started looking at the recoveries and realized that was the shit that mattered anyway. The failures were mostly uncontrollable. They happened anyway. It wasn't anything I could plan around. And how I chose to react to them was the important part. Guess where I learned that, So I screwed up a whole bunch of MBA candidates and confused them about the future of planning and maybe saved some of their lives. If you want, I can show you more cool ski pictures.
Really an awesome story. Any other questions? Any other comments? Anyone? Any other input?
If you want to hear 5 minutes, I can give you some more details on the actually deepest, most impactful portion of all of this stuff. I hinted at it.
We're 6 minutes past right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I wasn't sure how far.
Anyone that wants to stick around is welcome to.
No,
but
I'm not going to do that.
I know we blocked this off for 8 to 8:30.
Go. We're done. That was fun. Reach out to me if you got a question.
Thank you, JB.
Thank you, JB.